Hi, my name is Ben Lucas, and this tutorial is brought to you by Tuts Plus. Today, we're going to talk about the power of smart objects. This is a promotional piece for the web series Job Hunters, in which graduates fight from 9 to 5 in the arena for job placement. As you can see, each of the individual actors in this scene have their own weapon. We have a pistol, grenade, medkit, hatchet, and darts. Now, one of the problems, obviously, we couldn't have a bunch of weapons on set exploding or shooting or throwing darts, so those were composited in. When I delivered this photo to the director told me that I had actually used the wrong kind of darts. There was a very specific dart that he needed that this actress used on the show. So what I'm going to show you today is how we can use smart objects to replace and update these graphics in a really complex scene. Before we get into actually updating the dart, let's take a look at what smart objects are and what they can do. Here I have a layer of some clouds. I'm going to quickly duplicate this layer with Control J, Command J on a Mac. And I'm going to take this top layer and let's add a motion blur. Filter, blur, and let's choose a radial blur so we can get that time-lapse effect. I'm going to change it from spin to zoom, crank up the amount, and let's pick something that would be right where the origin of the sun is or the clouds. Something like that. And now what we could do with this layer is add a mask and paint in black to get the parts where we don't want the clouds. That looks okay, but what if I missed where I actually want the clouds to be coming from? It seems strange that the origin point would be here. It feels like the origin point should be lower behind the horizon. Well, if you just add a filter, the filter's done. You change the pixels on that layer, and there's not much you can do about it. But if you use a smart object, you can go back and change what you originally had. So let's delete this layer. Now we're going to apply that same filter, but first we're going to change this into a smart object. So I'm going to right-click, convert to smart object. And you see the little symbol here, that tells you that this is going to be editable. So we're going to go filter, and I'm just going to apply that same blur that we had before. So now the filter has its own layer mask right here, and we can do the same painting out effect. But we still have the problem of the origin being in the wrong spot. Well, all you have to do is double click on here, and then you can bring it down. And at any point, you can change these filters. You can change the center point as well as the amount to make it have less blur or more blur depending on the effect. If you want to change the actual smart object and not just the filters you're applying to it, double click on the object and now we have our original photo. Now that you understand how smart objects work, let's head back over to our document. So let's go ahead and zoom in on the corner of the photo here on her darts. Now, these are the old darts, and this is wrong. When we swivel open, I made two different folders. I called one Smart Objects, and I called one Dumb Objects. I simply called it that, just so we can see a rasterized version of how this workflow would be if the director asked me to update everything, and I did not use Smart Objects. Let's look at that one first. So we have a dart here, dart, dart, dart. This one is the person, and below here we have some finishing effects. Now, these finishing effects, I added a bunch of different filters to an actual version of the grass. Here, let me pull up the opacity so you can see. I added kind of a crackle filter. Now, what a smart object allows me to do is it allows me to change the amount of crackle on that filter at any given time. But because the filter was applied to a rasterized layer, I'm stuck with that effect. And if I don't like it, I have to completely redo it. What that would look like is turning off this entire layer, making a selection of the background, duplicating it to its own layer, applying the crackle filters, and then masking it out. Honestly, I don't even remember what filters I used, and that is definitely problematic because sometimes you just play with filters and find what works to get the effect that you're looking for, and you can't duplicate it if you need to. That's another reason why smart objects are handy. We looked at the background, but let's look at these darts. I have them all going in slightly different directions as if she is rapid firing them out at different opponents. I added a motion blur to each one, but as you can see, the blur goes along the spine of the dart. It's not just a flat motion blur, so they actually look like that they're moving in the direction that you think they should be moving. If I wanted to update these, here's the dart I have. I'm going to copy it over to this layer. I'm going to paste it in here. Control T gives you free transform, and I'm going to try and put it on top of this dart here. There we go. Let's turn off that dart. And now, what would you do to this? Well, I think there was a motion blur, so filter, blur, motion blur, and then you'd have to guess what the right distance was to get it to match all the other darts and speed, and you'd have to kind of play with the angle until you got the right angle, maybe something like that, and completely re-render the filter. Now you'd have to bring in a new dart, change it to the size of the next one, apply the brand new filter, so on and so forth. Honestly, that takes way too much time, and I'm not even going to finish updating these darts. So let's just close the dumb objects folder for a minute and look at how we do this with smart objects. Now, remember that comic book crackle in the background? Let's take a look at that first. That's these bottom layers here. If I just look at one of those, let's look at it on full opacity, you can see it looked exactly the same before with the same filters. But if I need this filter to be changed, I can double click on the filter. It brings up my filter gallery, and I can change the type of filter that I'm doing or edit any of the parameters of that filter and update them into the new object at any time. Or if I noticed there was something distracting that needed to be clone stamped out, you can always double click on it, open up the original file, clone stamp it out, save, and then it will update those parameters into the new smart object. So now that we've looked at the background haze, let's get straight to the darts. Let's find our first dart. Okay, here's our first dart right here. I'm going to double click on this guy and we have our dart. Here's the correct one the director wanted me to update it with. So notice how it opened into a PSB file. So this is a file that is embedded into your original PSD. Now, you'll also notice this is PSB, but that's because this file went over the 2 gig limit. I believe it was 5 gigs originally. So I'm just going to paste the new dart the director needs in this file. Now, let's go ahead and transform it and make it fit the same size. A quick tip here, if you get one point of this dart lined up correctly, instead of trying to rotate, we could be here all day moving and rotating. Let's just get that one point lined up and change the center pivot point to right there. And now we can easily pivot and resize the darts according to that center point. It makes this process much quicker. Okay, we have a straight spine going all the way across, so I'm going to apply that transformation. And now I'm going to uncheck the back dart. If I delete this file, then that file goes away. But if I uncheck it, then it's completely hidden. Now, let's go back to our original file. Oh, noticed how nothing updated? Well, that's because we didn't click save. Remember, this is another type of file, but it's embedded into your original file. So if we don't click save, it won't update. So I'm going to hit Control S, save that really quickly. Notice how it says updating smart objects. Now, if we go over to our original image, we see that all 4 darts were updated to the dart that the director wanted. Not only that, but because we used smart filters, which is simply just applying a filter to a smart object, the motion blur and the unsharp mask that I applied, see, I wouldn't even remember that I applied an unsharp mask, and the new darts wouldn't have looked as good as the old ones. But those filters that I applied are now applied to all the smart objects. It's just the dart that's been changed out. If you wanted to link all of these darts together like I did here, all you have to do is simply create a new smart object and duplicate that layer by clicking right here. If you wanted to, say, update just one dart, making it a new dart that doesn't match the rest of them, because notice how when I updated one smart object, it updated the whole chain of smart objects. You can right-click here, choose New Smart Object via Copy, and now this new smart object, I can toggle on that other dart, click Save, and just that one dart has been updated, not the whole set of them, because I unlinked it from the original grouping by choosing New Smart Object. So now you've seen how we can use smart objects to update an image, whether it's updating an actual piece of the image, like changing out new darts, or changing effects that we've previously applied. Again, this was a promotional piece created for job hunters. If you want to know more, you can find a link in the description. I'm Ben Lucas. This tutorial was brought to you by Tuts Plus, and thanks for watching.